Hello and welcome back to Endemic Times. My name is Amira. We have been told for the last couple of months from the Biden administration, as well as the so called economic experts, that we are not in a recession, that inflation is coming down, and that the outlook for the economy is great. But I bet the over 100,000 employees that have been or will be laid off in the next few weeks would tell you something quite different. Yes, that's right. We are also being lied to about the employment outlook for the country. If you stick around, you're going to learn just how many people have and will be laid off before this holiday season. The big news this week, before Trump's announcement, was that Amazon was going to be laying off around 10,000 employees in both corporate and technology jobs. This would be the largest job cuts in the company's history, or so we are being told. So far, what we do know is that the focus of these layoffs is in the tech sectors that deal with devices such as Alexa, along with its retail division and human resources. Now, we all know that of the departments that Amazon has, HR might not be the place they should be cutting. But of course, par for the course, a company is going to trim departments that they know they can consolidate, make employees work harder with less support, and in the case of something like HR, reducing the ability of employees to have some advocacy, especially those that do not have unions. The projected 10,000 employee layoffs at Amazon represent roughly 3% of Amazon's corporate employees and less than 1% of its global workforce, which is more than 1.5 million workers. The explanation behind these layoffs is a souring of the global economy that has put pressure on it to trim businesses that have been overstaffed or under-delivering for years. Now, that's an interesting statement to be making when discussing Amazon, their business in general, but also what we know about their business practices. You're not overstaffed and under-delivering when delivery drivers are pissing in bottles and passing out, some ultimately dying because this billionaire doesn't want to improve schedules and work environments. Now, I get that some people are going to say that this is more in the corporate division and that it's not about the delivery drivers or the warehouse workers. But let's not forget that this company is worth billions of dollars. We should not be hearing any stories of any extent where workers are feeling so disenfranchised that they can't speak up about horrific work environments. Hence, their depleting of HR. A billion-dollar company didn't build a tornado shelter for their warehouse workers and kept them in a warehouse when a tornado came through. So please excuse me if I don't really give a fuck about the minutia of whether or not the focus of these job losses and horrific work environments is in the corporate structure or not. We should not stan a company like Amazon, and they deserve every critique. But I digress. The pandemic produced Amazon's most profitable era on record, for which it doubled its workforce in 2 years. But since early this year, Amazon's growth slowed to the slowest rate in 2 decades. I'm not really sure why this is considered such a surprise, though. The bloat of the economy, and especially a business model like Amazon, should realize that as the country opens back up, that naturally the influx of customers and cash that was coming into Amazon during and because of the pandemic couldn't sustain that for long. And let's face it, it's not like they aren't making money. They are just no longer able to continue to inflate the economy and monopolize almost every sector because consumers now have more options and the ability to look elsewhere. Apparently, last week, when Amazon executives met with investors, its stock sank to its lowest level since the early days of the pandemic, erasing nearly 1 trillion in value since last year. Oh no, not below 1 trillion. But seriously, there's never enough money for these greedy bastards. Amazon knows that the economy is suffering and shifting, which is why they have cautioned investors that growth could weaken, again, possibly falling to its lowest pace since 2001. This is why it's important to look past the experts because, let's face it, we are living in unprecedented times, which means that baselines, projections, and expectations of the past are all up in the air, which is why sadly I am looking at more than just experts and actually trying to see what are these billionaire owners and CEOs saying. They're saying it's shit because it is. And they are creating this shit. They are doing the layoffs because they can't stop being money hungry, and they are ultimately contributing to the economic problems we are facing now and the devastating outcome of the amount of layoffs that have and will continue to occur. In this article, they make the layoffs seem small and reduce things to percentages to not show the full extent of what all of this means. As you dig deeper, you see these layoffs are more than just 10,000 employees. From April through September, Amazon reduced its headcount by almost 80,000 people. Amazon also is closing or paring down other sections like Amazon Care, Scout, a cooler sized home delivery robot that employed 400 people, and Fabric.com, a subsidiary that has been in business for a couple of decades. There are no numbers for the care sector or the Fabric offshoot, so even more people are being affected that we don't have solid numbers for. Amazon also stopped filling more than 10,000 open roles in its core retail sector and froze corporate hiring across the company. And that news came so suddenly that recruiters did not have talking points for job candidates until almost a week later. This means that in addition to those employees being laid off, it's limiting the opportunity for those looking to enter the workforce or move up. This is exactly what happened to graduates in 2008. The market was flooded with highly educated and eager workers that had nowhere to go. With so many getting left behind, if they didn't have connections or weren't in the right place at the right time, finding good paying jobs felt like a feat of monumental proportions. Who knows how this is going to affect workers in the long run? This is so ominous, and it doesn't stop at Amazon workers. It also affects contractors, for which Amazon has separately already started to lay off contractors in recruiting. Keep in mind, there's still no exact numbers for these now laid off workers. And what are US CEOs saying about all of this? Over 90% already believe that a recession is on the way, and over half say that they are planning preemptive layoffs within the next 6 months. This is on top of the numbers that we do have. Take Twitter, for example. Musk is expected to cut half the workforce by 3,700 as early as this Friday, with managers being asked to draw up lists of employees to fire. Stripe has announced cuts to their workforce totaling around 1,000, and their CEO noted that it's due to higher interest rates, inflation, declining investments, and global recession fears. Lyft is laying off 13% of its workforce, which is around 700 employees on top of the 60 that have already been laid off in July. They have put a hiring freeze in place since September. Other companies like Microsoft and Redfin have all made cuts or intend to in their Seattle area workforces. Meta has slashed 726 positions in Seattle and Bellevue. But these cuts are local. On the wider scale, from the data I was able to collect so far, Meta is going to be laying off around 11,000 employees, Microsoft around 1,000, and Redfin approximately 862. This is a huge deal because what this signals to both the economy and the stock market, but also smaller companies that are trying to find their place in the market, this is going to affect their ability to both hire and survive. Smaller startup businesses that rely on tech investments and venture capital funding have also been cutting down on their employees. Recruiters say that this could result in a slowing or stopping entirely at Seattle local tech startups, mostly in part because of investors pulling back. For a formerly bustling tech region, Seattle is no longer going to look as it has in the past. And now workers are waiting to hear whether these layoffs are going to affect them. It is one of the hardest things as an employee to see and hear layoffs happening. It puts you in such a state of fear, and that's what these companies want. They want their workers to be so scared for their own jobs so that they put their heads down, don't speak up when things go awry, and ultimately use that power to keep workers and their wages down. Since many of these layoffs are going to occur here in the US, this means that people are going to be concerned for their ability to pay their bills during a record level inflation period, and also their health care. I'm sure many of us have heard the countless stories from family and friends that stay in jobs that they absolutely hate because they are making sure that they and their families have health care. It's such a vulnerable place to be in, and that the companies and this capitalist structure gets to continue to degrade and tear down any level of worker power that has come forward in the last 2 years really goes to show how little The political elite in this country give a fuck because they see this and they continue to allow themselves to be bought and paid for because at the end of the day, it's all about the Benjamins for them and the pittance for us. The unfeeling and callousness of looking at people as purely numbers and nothing more stood out to me in almost everything that I looked at. One person said that even if all 10,000 of Amazon's layoffs were confined to Washington state, it would only be taking their local employment headcount back about a year or so. Headcounts, bottom lines, etc., etc. These are people behind these numbers, people with families and lives to support, rent and mortgages, groceries and utility bills. Who is going to care about their bottom lines? Another person is looking at this as a talent grab, saying that letting some talent back in the market isn't a horrible thing because the demand is still so high. But that doesn't track with everything that we're seeing. As investors see what big tech companies are doing, they are not going to take financial risks on smaller firms. So that means new jobs are going to dwindle and current jobs are going to be on the chopping block. And companies want to trim the fat of employees but continue to make lots of money with inflated prices that are keeping our economy at its current level. The other thing to keep in mind here is that this isn't just confined to tech workers. At Amazon, it's also retail and HR, some of the most expendable departments that so many corporations see no real benefit from having, even though it's what keeps businesses running. And what about these expected salaries of previous Amazon and other tech giant company employees? A lot of smaller companies won't be able to keep up with some of the wages that these tech workers were able to glean from bigger companies like Amazon. That means that workers will be both competing for jobs and competing to see who is willing to take less to likely do more. And none of these smaller companies are going to be able to employ all of these tech workers that are being laid off en masse from these billion-dollar corporations. This is really horrible news when we look at the broader picture. Economists are saying that it's too early to know how this is going to affect the tech industry, and we won't get some real firm numbers from state employment data for quite a few months. This is going to leave workers feeling likely more distraught and precarious than they did before the pandemic, which we know workers were not feeling good about their bosses, the company structure, and the way that Big Corp does business. Now, workers are going to put their heads down and try to keep their jobs. A Google employee in Seattle said that people that used to scan openings are now focused on keeping their current role. This was all orchestrated to ruin employee power, and it's devastating to see. As promised, I said I was going to show you just how many workers have lost their jobs or will. And this is just from the data from the reports that I was able to get. All the links to these data points is in the description box. This here shows just how many jobs are being lost. Over 108,000 people are or will be laid off in the next weeks. From here, we can see that over 90,000 Amazon employees have or will be laid off. 11,000 at Meta, 3,700 at Twitter, 1,000 at Stripe, 760 at Lyft, 1,000 at Microsoft, and 862 at Redfin. That equals over 108,872 known layoffs. And please note that this does not include the numbers of other companies that are trimming down headcounts and the future layoffs in the next few months. We are being lied to about everything. Take this as a sign and a warning of things to come. What do you think all of this? Do you work at any of these companies? If you do, please let us know down in the comments below. This, in my opinion, is absolutely devastating, and I feel for anyone that is currently scared for their job. And if you're unemployed, my heart goes out to you. I've been there, I am there, I get it. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this downer video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell. I'm working on getting more content out, and I want to thank all of you for your support. As always, remember to stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other.